It's the Eye Review, and today let's talk about superhero films. Now, there's been a recent trend of making superhero films much more darker and realistic than, say, they used to be in the early centuries. And it's gotten to the point where almost every single film based on a comic book does this. So why is that? Well, if you ask me, it depends on how the film is being rated these days. All you gotta do is go look at The Dark Knight, see how much money that grossed, and you can see what the fuss is about. Now, directors are pretty much stalked as audiences demand more mature versions of their favorite crusaders. But one of the last truly goofy superhero films I could think of was Sam Raimi's 2002 big screen adaptation of Spider-Man.
Who am I? You sure you want to know? If somebody told you I was just your average, ordinary guy, not a care in the world, somebody lied. Truth is, it wasn't always like this. There was a time when life was a lot less complicated. Can I take your picture for the school paper?
Sure. In this lab, we have 15 genetically enhanced super spiders.
There's 14. One's missing.
Peter, are you all right?
I'm fine.
Hey, look, you're changing. I know I'm gonna do exactly the same thing at your age.
No, not exactly.
Wow.
Peter, may I introduce my father, Norman Osborn?
Great honor to meet you, sir.
Harry tells me you're quite the science whiz. You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
What the hell is that? Whatever it is, somebody has to stop it.
With great power comes great responsibility.
This is my gift.
Wow.
It is my curse.
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
Do I get to say thank you this time?
You do too much. You're not Superman, you know.
So Spider-Man was released in 2002, and it stars Tobey Maguire, Christian Dunst, James Franco, and Willem Dafoe, and it was directed by Sam Raimi, who had directed a bunch of famous films such as the Evil Dead movies, and this was his first attempt at a superhero film. And for what it wasn't bad. Now, pretty sure everybody knows the story of Spider-Man, but for those two people who really should be returning their nerd cards in, I'll explain. Spider-Man tells the story of Peter Parker, a 15-year-old kid who down on his luck when one day during a school trip he gets bitten by a genetically enhanced spider, which gives him the ability to climb on walls, gives him enhanced strength, speed, and allows him to shoot webs. At first he decides to use his power for self-gain, but he decides to become a superhero after losing his uncle, but things get more complicated when a villain named the Green Goblin shows up and starts attacking the city. So Spider-Man has to stop the Green Goblin before he hurts too many people. The movie is, for what it is, a pretty decent Spider-Man film. It was the very first time we've seen Spider-Man in live action. And for what it was pretty good. Tobey Maguire, I think, is a great Peter Parker. And I know a lot of people will agree with me on this one that he's a good Peter Parker, but wasn't a perfect Spider-Man. But for what he had, he was okay as Spider-Man. Yes, he did. Yes, it was kind of hard to believe it was him saying all those one-liners and when he was in the suit. But what it was good. Christian Dunst. Alright, I'm just gonna say it. Christian Dunst is MJ. Just a damsel in distress character. And I know a lot of people will say that, for what it was, in the first movie, she has a good backstory of how she comes from a broken family and all that, but besides that, she's not really interesting. I mean, in this film alone, she needs to be saved 5 times. But give her this, for what her chemistry with Tobey Maguire was pretty good, and no, that's about all I can say. James Franco as Harry Osborn, pretty good actor, a kid who wants to be a rich kid who gets picked on as well as much as Peter does, and just wants to be his father, just wants to be impressed by his father. But then there's Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, and I'm gonna say it, he goes way over the top, but you know what? That's a good thing. The Green Goblin's always been a character who's been over the top, no matter which version. The comics, cartoons, video games, it's always an over-the-top version of the Goblin. All the other actors are pretty good, but the big standout, without a doubt, is J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. He is perfect casting. He is fun. He just steals it as the uptight, angry guy that Jameson is, and he is perfect to the point where I'm so glad they brought him back for future appearances as Jameson. Not all the time, but most of the time. With the cast out of the way, how's this? The rest of the film. Sam Raimi was really good at making this film. While there was a bunch of other ideas for how the film would go, he did not want to keep it away from the classic story of Spider-Man. So everything is there. The spider bite, the losing the uncle, the whole great power comes great responsibility thing, everything is there. The costuming is also great, particularly with the costuming design for Spider-Man and the Goblin. While they had a few other ideas for what Spider-Man's suit would look like, courtesy of comic artist Alex Ross, a red and black suit was considered, but they decided not to go with it and change it up to a more, I guess, a realistic style of what the classic red and blue would look like, with the sharper looking eyes and the 3D webbing. It's a pretty cool suit. Another thing that stands out is the music done by Danny Elfman. Now, Danny Elfman's been a great composer, doing films for movies like the music for Nightmare Before Christmas and Beetlejuice, and a bunch of other movies. But there are some downfalls to the film. I've talked about the great stuff, and there's the downfalls. First of all, the visual effects do not hold up well. It was 2002, so don't expect the CGI to be groundbreaking, but but the CGI looks so fake in this film that it's not even funny. Granted, as the films went on, they get better, but the first one, not so much. Also, the dialogue is pretty bad. Now, of course, the dialogue is written by John Hughes. John Hughes. And he's written great films such as Home Alone and Jurassic Park. But he's also directed some stinkers like Home Alone 2 and The Lost World. His dialogue in Spider-Man, falls into that category of goofiness. Particularly the one, this one line right here.
And when she got out of the car and you saw her for the first time, you grabbed me and said, Aunt May? Aunt May? Is that an angel?
Are you an angel?
Ugh. You see my point? I get the idea that you're trying to make that sound like a comic book, but I just wish it didn't sound like a 1960s comic book. But with that said, the film isn't terrible. It's a great movie, and I think it's worth checking out. Alright, I'm going to give away the ending to Spider-Man. In case you have never seen this movie, go watch it. Otherwise, I don't care. After the Green Goblin kidnaps Mary Jane for the 5th time in this movie, and holds her at hostage along with a bunch of children on a bridge, Spider-Man saves them, gets knocked into a greenhouse, and has a battle with the Goblin. Where it's revealed the Goblin has been Norman Osborn this whole time, which would have been a good twist, actually, if they, didn't already give it away. But during their battle, Goblin gets impaled with his glider and dies, with Spider-Man dragging him back home, with Harry believing he kills him. He had killed him. At the funeral, Harry vows that he will get revenge on Spider-Man, and MJ confesses that she cares about Peter, but Peter says they can't be together because he's afraid that if his enemies find out who he is, they'll get to her to come to him. Even though she was already in danger 5 times in this film. No, never mind. So yeah, if you like comic book movies, check this one out. I give Spider-Man a 4.1 out of 5. I'll go with the reviewer, and I'll see you next time.